Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlock Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here with you guys today. I'm here with a very, very special guest, Maxwell Ivey, and I can't wait for him to share his story with you guys. So, what I want you to know about today's show, we're going to be talking about how to shift your perspective and how actually shifting your perspective often shifts your results. So if you're somewhere in your life right now and you're looking at it and going, holy heck, this is not quite what I wanted. Sometimes we just have to have a little bit of a perspective shift, and all of a sudden, your results will start to change too. I think you're going to be intrigued. You're going to be inspired and motivated by the things that Max talks to us about today. You're going to hear his story of determination, and his story of, I'm going to say, finding the silver lining wherever and this is going to sound a little bit strange, but wherever he looked, right? And what I'm going to tell you about Max today is that some time ago in his early stages of life, he was actually diagnosed with a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and hopefully I've pronounced that correctly, which actually has impacted his ability to be able to see. So he's visually impaired. He's actually legally blind. Has that actually stopped Max from doing anything in life? Heck no. And you guys are going to see just by purely listening to him and seeing his attitude on today's show that he hasn't let that hold him back in any way, shape, or form. Way back when he was grew up in a family of carnival owners, and won't sort of spill the beans on all of that. I'll let him share some of his story about being in a family of carnival owners. But like I said, he hasn't let anything in his life hold him back. He has found a way to make everything that he's ever wanted be able to happen. So now he's gone on to be, one of the first blind bloggers. So he writes on his blog. He also speaks very, very frequently on various different pod shows and speaks to audiences all over the world and all over in his local area. And he continues to inspire local business owners to do their thing and to do it well, in spite of what might be in front of them or what might be holding them back or be little blips on the radar. Let's call them that. So welcome to the show, Max. It's fantastic to have you here. And I can't wait to sort of explore more about your journey and the secrets that you've had to your ongoing success. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate getting to spend some time to talk with you and your audience, and hopefully we will inspire some of them to change the way they're looking at their circumstances.
I have no doubt that is going to be the case. So let's kind of start here. Let's go, back in time, and tell us a little bit about your, I suppose, your upbringing, your life, and being, somebody who grew up in the world of carnivals, where when I think of the carnival, I'm thinking of lots going on, a lot of high risk things happening, lots of sparkly things and lights and what have you. And so for somebody who's visually impaired to try and manage their way around an environment like that could be quite a challenge. So tell us a little bit about that, and maybe how that set you up for the success that you've been experiencing.
Right. Well, first off, my personal family's carnival was never anything as grand as what y'all have at your agricultural fairs. We never owned any ride that took more than one trailer or more than two or three people to set up and take down. So we had about an 8-ride carnival, but it all started with my grandfather, who started a carnival in the 1950s in Texas. And pretty much all of my family has been in the business at some time or another. And I actually have one cousin named Jason who is still operating a carnival, or what they call a fun fair, in some parts of the world. And he's actually built his show up to a very large concern that travels 12 months out of the year, and will go all the way from Corpus Christi, which is right on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, all the way up into Nebraska and back during the course of his season. And he has several rides that are worth 10 times what our Midway was ever worth. So much more successful at it than my family ever was. Plus, before I was an adult, when I was growing up in the family, back then it was really more of a family thing, more of a seasonal business. not so corporate. Basically, your family members would keep you in school until the school year was over, and then you would join your parents or your aunts and uncles wherever they happened to be working for the summer months. And during the wintertime, you would find ways like selling Christmas trees or fireworks or stuffed animals on the side of the road, just what everybody calls a side hustle now. Us carnival owners, we had side hustles back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s because there was no way to do what we do year round back then. So it's changed a lot. But I grew up in a family where there were 6 kids and everybody in the family was in the business. My grandfather had purchased a piece of property. So when we were in school, there was, across 2 or 3 grades, there'd be 15 or 20 of us. When we were at home, we all played with each other. So for most of my life and most of the year, things weren't all that different. But you are right. The family was always worried about me getting hurt. And so they did things to try to keep me protected whenever I was working. They would let me put the butter on the popcorn and put the popcorn in the boxes, but they wouldn't let me run the machine that makes the popcorn, for example. My dad would let me help him set up and take down the rides, but only if him or one of the other family members was working right alongside me to make sure that some hourly or weekly help wasn't going to, get distracted and let me get hurt. And over the years, I was very lucky to be part of the family business, and I did everything except drive. I've set up and taken down rides. I've had grease all over me at more than one time. Worked the food, the games. My main thing was doing the bookings, which is one of those things that's really helped me as I've gotten into the online world, because I spent a lot of time cold calling and later on cold emailing. And I am an expert at being told no, because when you have an 8-ride carnival in a state like Texas, where everybody has 2 or 3 times as many rides as you do, they don't want Max's Carnival unless Max's Carnival is the only carnival they can have. So I've been told no just about every way it can be said to you, but as a result, I don't fear no anymore. I just go on to the next question, the next problem, the next opportunity. So I was, thanks to encouragement by family members, teachers, scoutmasters, even though I was losing my vision, I did graduate from a traditional high school and college. I'm one of the few blind Eagle Scouts. I worked alongside the family for 15 years before my dad's death resulted in our show going out of business. And for about 3 or 4 years after that happened, I was really at a loss and didn't know what I was going to do next. We ended up selling our rides and working with my uncle's carnival. And we had competed very bitterly with my uncle's carnival over the years. So it was kind of like, if I have to lose, why do I have to lose to them? There are other carnivals in Texas we could work with besides this one, but that didn't happen. And a year or so later, I was forced off of that midway because my games could no longer compete with newer, flashier, fancier, more interactive attractions. And at that was the point where, I decided, okay, I've got to do something else. What do I know how to do? And the only thing I really felt like I knew how to do was to help other people sell their used rides, because I had to do it for my own family so many times over the years. Unfortunately, we're talking the internet age. And so, you didn't just call people up on the phone or get somebody to drive you around. You had to create a website. So in 2007, when I finally got my family to accept that it was not healthy for me to be on the Carnival Midway, that just me being there was not a good enough, or having me there was not a good enough reason for me to be there. And they let me come home and work full-time on my website, the Midway Marketplace, where I still help people buy and sell used rides, games, and other attractions. And I have actually sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of rides on 5 continents, including several rides that went to Australia as a result of my work.
Wow.
And yeah, there's a giant carousel in the Melbourne area, that one of the double-decker Italian jobs that I'm responsible for it being there. So, but yeah, when I finally decided, okay, I am no longer a carnival owner, I have to accept this and really go all in on what I'm going to do next. that's when challenges started to show up. But it's also when I learned that I was so much capable of so much more than I ever thought I was. I feel like now, when I look back at my earlier years, that I had a bit of tunnel vision as it comes to the life I wanted to be part of, and I really didn't try a whole lot of other things that maybe I could have. And then some of this stuff didn't come along until the early 2000s, as far as that goes. But I started this website. I had no idea how I was going to build a website. I had no idea how I was going to get clients or write the advertising words or just all the stuff that goes into running an online business. But I filed for the domain name, and I said, okay, the next thing is we have to figure out how to build a website. So I started asking a bunch of stupid questions on the internet in forums, and eventually somebody said, hey, Max, why don't you go to the w3c.org school and go through some of their tutorials, and then when you come back, you can at least ask us some halfway smart questions. And so I didn't get offended. I was like, great, I've been looking for a resource the whole time. Which one of y'all said this 3 months ago? So I go there and I go through the tutorials on how to create your homepage and links and how to put images on your website. And I go through it step by step, and I eventually get to the point where I've got my own website up, and I'm doing a pretty good job with it, and people are starting to find out about my business. And then I get that email one day that says, I've just found out you're visually impaired. I wonder if you know how bad your website is. And I'm like, what do you mean how bad my website is? People are visiting it. Here's my stats. And he said, well, your colors are horrible. And he said, you've got this eye screaming yellow for a background. You've got blue text instead of black text. You've got red link text, and you got this orange color that shows when links have been clicked before. He said, this is like something you see on the side of a honky tonk. And I took offense at it. I mean, over the years, people have said Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder could have argued over it. It was that bright. But what I did was I said, okay, this site is as good as I can make it right now, because this is the best I can do with my skills and talents. I didn't have any money to hire a webmaster. And back then, webmasters were getting crazy money, thousands of dollars. And I didn't have the faith to turn my baby over to somebody else if I had the money. So I just did. I said, okay, this is as good as you can do with the website, Max. Now, what else do you do? So I started recruiting clients and listing equipment, and I started selling equipment, and I started building an email list by exchanging text links on my website, and basically just did one thing after another after another. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned some of the lessons more than once. But eventually what happened was I did start to have success with the Midway Marketplace, but also people started saying, hey, Max, we are really inspired by the way you take on difficult challenges with joy and just do the next thing that seems to be in front of you. We want to hear more of your life as a blind entrepreneur. And so that led to the blindblogger.net. That led to 4 books so far. That led to public speaking and singing in public and being on hundreds of podcasts, and now having my own podcast and even my own What's Your Excuse network. So a lot of this, though, it all goes back to that day on September 27th of 2007 when I filed for a domain name, not knowing what the heck I was going to do next. And then just did the next small thing and the next small thing. And to where now eventually I am a top influencer who's visually impaired. My podcast is in the top 5% of podcasts on the internet, according to Listen Notes. So all these things started because I basically just did that one small thing and then followed it up with a whole bunch of other small things. But the most important thing is I had to accept that I was no longer a carnival owner, that this industry that I grew up in was no longer my home.
What an inspiring story, and I actually want to pause for a minute because I want to unpackage some of the things that you've spoken about, because there's so many, important points, milestones within that journey that you have had. And I want to take you back to this because it was an important piece that you mentioned, and it was around you sort of started with it and you actually finished with it, and it was the day that you were like, okay, I need to kind of accept that I'm no longer a carnival owner. And now and I think that is extremely important in any success that we have in our lives moving forward, because often people are, we make these shifts. So whether it's from a corporate world into entrepreneurship, whether it's moving into a new job, whether it's learning a new instrument, whatever the thing is that you are doing, I think there's something that fundamental that happens. And you spoke about this when you said, I had to realize that I was more than a carnival owner. So that shift in your mind was like a identity shift. Now I want to actually unpackage that, because I think this is one of those lessons, one of those, I'm going to call it a success secret, because I believe that if you can't make that mental shift, that create the new identity at your conscious level, your subconscious level, then it's going to be very difficult for you to assume a new role or a new path. So talk me through, what was it that you did to actually assume and create the new identity? Because it could have been very easy for you to have said, hey, I'm a carnival, person. That's where my family grew up. I'm a carny. That's me. But you didn't do that. What did you specifically do that helped you to create that new identity of who you were creating, the Max of the now and of the then and the future? How'd you do that?
Right. Well, a couple of things I think were really important. One is I had a health scare, and so I got with a primary care doctor and started getting healthier, which the first part of that was to be being diagnosed for sleep apnea and being treated with a CPAP machine. Well, for those men who your wives and girlfriends are telling you snore and that you need to get checked, please go get checked, because trust me, if you're not getting good sleep or good rest, you are working at 60 or 50 or 40% of your capacity. And in my case, being able to get good rest, what that meant was it decreased the fuzziness in my mind, and it also took away some of the hurt feelings that I was hanging on to, because it was, when you don't feel good, when you're not sleeping, you're not making great decisions. You are not emotionally a well person because you're physically unwell. And so I found that I had more energy and more clarity. And I was able to look and see, okay, Max, you're going out here every week and setting up your Kitty High Striker game. And every week you're having to get money from your mother's food wagon in order to continue showing up. So after getting healthy and getting the clarity, I'm like, what's the purpose of me being here? There's no way I'm ever going to make a living here. There's nothing I can do with my budget or my credit that I could purchase that would allow me to make a living here. So basically, the only reason I'm here is to make them feel better or not feel bad about themselves, because I'm at home and they're out working where they've always worked. So getting my family to finally accept it and let me go home was really the hardest part, because I knew it 6 months before anybody else agreed to it. But it really did start by getting physically healthy, and then that translating into mental well-being, and then just taking the time. And trust me, I had a lot of time, because I'd be on the midway and other people would have crowds around their games, and I'd be sitting there talking to myself because nobody was within 20 feet of my game, And I thought about it, and I was like, Max, this just doesn't make any sense. So the other thing that happened, as far as making the mental transition and realize seeing myself differently, is I found this great woman on the internet. Her name is Adrienne Smith, and she used to be known as the blog commenting rock star. And she taught me everything I need, everything I know about relationship building, using relationships online to build communities and find opportunities. And I refer to always as my blogging mama. And I plan on referring to her that way when I'm on the red carpet someday, maybe at one of these podcast award ceremonies or something. But she said, Max, I know you've come a long way and you're really doing great work at your website. She said, but you are more than a carnival owner. You are more than an amusement equipment broker. And I argued with her for 2 years. I said, Adrienne, I am nothing special. I'm just a guy who shows up every day and works his butt off, trying to build a business so he can help support his family. I am nothing special. And it took her 2 years to convince me, and it really came down to her finally explaining it to me in a way that made sense to me. And I hope this helps some of the people that are listening, because it was really important. Part of this, because if you don't have an Adrian in your life that will tell you that you're better than you are when you don't see yourself as being all that great, then you need to go find one. But the other thing is, here's how she broke it down for us. She said, Max, you have a built-in excuse. If you wanted to sit on your couch and watch TV or listen to the radio and eat junk food, nobody would say word one about it. But the fact that you have this excuse and don't use it, that you show up every day and work your heart out, that's what makes you compelling, she says, because there are so many people in this world who don't have an obvious built-in disability or roadblock or obstacle that's standing in their way, and yet they don't show up in their own lives or in their own businesses. And so when they see you doing it with Max, when you have this great excuse not to, it just challenges everything they believe as far as what they're doing or not doing in their own lives. And once she explained it to me that way, I'm like, okay, yes, I can inspire others by doing what I do, which is a lot of times it's just trying new things and telling people what my experience was like, or sharing the stories from past experiences. I'm very thankful that I'm a good storyteller and that people enjoy my stories and the lessons that come out of them. And I'm also thankful that somehow I seem to continue to have experiences that are worthy of being retold. But really, it was three things. It was getting physically healthy so I could get mentally healthy. It was having the time to really think and evaluate my situation. And then it was having that really good friend that I trust saying, Max, this is where I think you are meant to be. And it hurts me not to see you on the path to being there.
I mean, she's absolutely right. And what a gem of a woman to be able to have somebody like that as your wingman, wingwoman, mentor. Because often you're right. Like a lot of the time, people don't always see the magic in themselves, but it takes somebody else to actually see that magic and say to you, here it is. It's like they become the mirror that you're actually able to see, acknowledge, and understand that you have got some real genius and some magic inside of you that really can impact and help somebody else. So I'm so fantastic. I mean, I'm all for people having mentors, and like you say, if you haven't got somebody like an Adrian in your life, then Max and I would both encourage you today to find that person. There is millions and millions of them out there. There is somebody for you that can really be that that mirror that can help, can identify and help you to see the magic inside of you. So I love that, and fantastic for her for doing that. That brings me back to, I know that one of your core values, Max, too, and this is really highlighted in that story that you've just told, which is decide to find solutions instead of making excuses. And like Adrian said to you, you've got a built-in excuse. You could say, I can't see, I can't do that because, and it could become the excuse that your fallback position every single time you were to try something new, but you certainly haven't been that. And I think that the message that I'm hearing loud and clear today is that no matter how big of a idea or a mountain something feels that you need to climb, the thing that you need to do, and you're just going to take a leaf out of Max's book and say, well, whatever excuse I'm going to come up with, I'm just going to sit that to the side for a moment and just give it a red hot crack, give it a go and see what happens. And small things, just one step at a time, just one small thing that you do today will have that compounding effect. And over time, all those little small things will amount to something big and something phenomenal that you can actually achieve in your life. So I think Max's story today is absolutely one of a situation like that. The other thing I wanted to say is that how inspiring, not able to see, I'm going to build myself a website. Let's just get out there and do it. And colors, and I mean, and that's kind of my thing. You probably don't even know this about me, Max, but I actually have my own software company that helps people build their own websites, their funnels, their membership sites, and so I teach branding and all that sort of stuff. So I probably would have been one of them people too that would have looked at it and said, okay, I think I might be able to help you here, Max. Let's just change a few of these colors and move some things around. Aside from that, the fact that you were just like, well, so what? I'm just going to give it a go. Did the fact that maybe it didn't look so pretty, maybe it had a few spelling mistakes on it, maybe, the buttons weren't the right color, did that actually stop you from having success with that website? Do people still buy stuff from you?
They still buy stuff from me now, and I've actually had several people that, even after looking at that website, hired me to give them appraisals on equipment so they could sell the equipment or finance it. So yes, it hasn't hurt me one bit. And we left out a couple of important things. I still don't have a way to manage media. I have both of my brothers will look at the photos people send me and they'll go, okay, Max, this is the order you should use them in. But when you can't resize photos, that means that you may have 2 or 3 different sized and different quality images on the same page together. So beyond the colors and the buttons, there was also the photos. So it was a mess. And if anybody doubts the veracity of what I'm saying, there's a website called archive.org. And if you look up midwaymarketplace.com on that website from 2008 or 2009, you will get a small glimpse of just how bad it was. And I do want to warn people, please do not look directly into your monitor. You may want to put on some sunshades first because it was bad. But, the real thing was, is I was at that point, okay, I'm no longer a carnival owner. At this point, the only thing I feel like I know how to do was help people sell rides. I would eventually learn that was a flawed assumption. But so basically, I had 2 choices. I either go ahead and go with the site as it was, or I take the site down. And if I take the site down, I sure as heck can't sell nobody no rides, because as I always tell people when they ask me if I have somebody that will buy their particular piece of equipment, I always say, look, people won't buy it unless they fall in love with it, and they won't fall in love with it unless they can see it. So until we can show it to them, I can't answer that question,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, I'm going to say to everybody like listening today, if you are somebody that's, maybe you've got a website, or maybe you've got something that you've created, and perhaps you're procrastinating a little bit, thinking, oh, it's just not quite, people put air quotes, perfect. I haven't got the right colors on it. This isn't finished. From Max's story, it's he would say to you, just get it out there, put it out there. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because you can always fix it on the go, right? It doesn't have to, it's not static. It doesn't have to stay that way forever.
Unless
get it out there.
Unless it teaches a good lesson. I agree with you. Far too many people are letting perfection hold them back, and they have great work that they should be sharing with the world. And thankfully, during COVID, a lot of people have overcome that perfectionism and those fears and put themselves out there. But, as far as things not being quite perfect, some of my best received work was not perfect. And I think I've actually come to understand that, especially online, people like to feel like they could do what you're doing. So whenever people see a website that is just off the scale as far as how well it's designed and how well it works, the more perfect or close to perfect a website or a blog or a podcast appears to be, the less likely people are to want to do business with that site for the most part, because it just makes them feel bad about themselves. It makes them, especially if you're a sole entrepreneur or a small business, it makes them feel like, I could never do that. There's no way I could ever do what they're doing. So when you remember that there are all these millions of people out here thinking there's no way they could do what you're about to do, that really should take some of the pressure off of that fear of not being good. And I will tell you something, it's never going to be good enough. I wrote code over 6 years before switching to WordPress. And every so often I would run into a page that I had to update that I've written like week 1. And I would have to stop myself from editing all the stuff that I now knew better than to do, because as you do something, you get better at it, you learn more about it. But I would always stop myself because I'll be like, man, if I fix this one page, I'll be fixing the other 1,000 pages or however many there are on that website. So, but here's a perfect example of how even something that's not great can still help you build an audience, can still draw people to you, your story, and your business. When I recorded my first video as the blind blogger, now you mentioned that I have retinitis pigmentosa, which generally eats away at the peripheral vision and the ability to see colors. Your vision in and out of dark places is decreased drastically. Well, I have very little vision. I can only tell if a light is on or off if I look directly at where it's supposed to be when I pull the string or flip the light switch. And so when I sat down to record my first video as the blind blogger, I found out later that I did not know the lights were off. So I recorded this great video. I wrote this wonderful blog post. I put it out into the world. I was so proud of it. And the first few people were like, and this was about a third of the people who saw this video. This was their response. They were like, Max, you're sitting in a dark room, or you're sitting in a cave, or it looks like you're in a mine somewhere. You need to fix this. You need to re-record this. And so I was about to do just that. And then I started hearing from people who were like, Max, you are the blind guy, and we can just imagine you leading us out of the darkness into the light, helping us overcome our blindness, and just so many different metaphors people would come up with for the fact that I had recorded this video in almost no light in my room. And so a third of the people thought it was junk, that it needed to be replaced. 2/3 of the people thought, what a wonderful metaphor. They were inspired and motivated by the fact that I took the courage to record the video, and that I put it out there, and it just happened to speak to them. And that's the way a lot of this stuff is online. We can never really know for sure in advance if a particular post, audio or video, is going to speak to large numbers of people until we release it. So back to what you said and back to what I said, just press publish, just press send, just get the stuff out there and get better as you're doing it. Because like you just said, it doesn't have to stay that way unless you decide you want it to stay that way. I have a few posts that are still as bad as they were on day one because they teach a particular life lesson, and I get to tell stories about them like today.
And the thing that you've spoken about in here is that I'm going to say authenticity and relatability is really important. Like when you were talking about, right, so when I started in this realm of, online, right, and building relationships, but people are not looking for something that is perfect because it feels as if it's so far out of their reach that they just can't attain that. They can't get to that. Because if you're creating something that is very relatable, you're like, I can do that. That's me. That's possible. So you're actually opening people's eyes to the possibility and the opportunity that actually exists. The other thing that I want to say, and this is something you mentioned this is way back at the beginning of our conversation. And I think you said something like, when I was thinking through, why the heck am I still here, doing my thing with my family at the carnival? And I'm the reason I'm here is I'm doing it for them. And I realized, I think I might not get these verbatim, but it was something to the effect of, I knew that whatever I was doing it I was wanting to make other people happy, because you're either doing things to make other people feel good or not feel so good. So my takeaway from that is, with anything that you're doing in business, we want to look at it from a perspective of, how do I actually make my audience, my client, my customer, the people that I work with feel better and feel like there's opportunity and that there's hope with whatever it is that I'm doing. If I'm actually creating things to be perfect and to show that I'm better, I'm perfect, I'm this and that, the likelihood of you actually getting clients or having people follow and want to be part of your world is fairly slim. What is your thought on that? That's what I've taken away from some of the things that you've talked about today.
Oh, I agree with you. It is about creating likability and relatability, and that comes from being authentic. Unfortunately, when I talk to people about sharing their stories and being authentic, I still find way too many business owners whose attitude is if I share too much of myself, it will cost me work. That people will not want to do business with me because they feel that I am weak, inept, or not quite qualified to perform the service that they're going to hire me for, or qualified to produce the product that they're considering buying. So it is a little more difficult for a business owner, but I still come back to the bottom line is, if you are being authentic and relatable, then you are creating that likability. As you said, people prefer to do business with people that they feel some sort of relationship or connection or tie to. They don't want to do business with people that make them uncomfortable simply because they represent a different level of success. Just think about how it makes you feel. Even if you know your job is not in jeopardy, how does it make you feel sitting across the desk from your boss, knowing there are several levels above you and making a lot more money than you are? It's kind of like that way in the online world. I mean, if I come across as somebody who is a quote guru or a quote expert, and I give the impression that I know it all and that I'm something unique and something special, and I'm basically telling y'all that no matter what you do, you can't be me or be like me or do something that is just as important to you using some of my same methods. So that's where I always try to default to. Is like, if I give people the impression that I'm something special or unique, then that really just makes it harder on them to try to implement some of the things that I try to share with people when when I'm doing podcasts or when I am out speaking. So I try to keep that. I try to remember that a lot. I also go out of my way to let people see the work that's being done by other people, whether they are friends or family or contractors, because that's part of my gratitude exercise, to make sure that I'm always thankful for when people do things for me, whether they're paid for them or not. But it's also just my way of letting people see, hey, Max isn't doing all of this stuff by himself, and he isn't doing all of it at the same time. So please don't feel frustrated, depressed, or want to quit because you think Max is some Superman that he isn't. So that's another thing I wish more entrepreneurs, especially online business owners, would do more of, is let people see them. Okay, maybe you can't let them see you at your worst, but at least don't always show yourself to them at your best, at your glossiest, at your prettiest. Let people see you have bad days. Let people see you've made mistakes and recovered from them. I went on one of my trips to New York City. I went skating at Rockefeller Center, and I fell down several times. And I told the skate guys, I said, the next time I fall down, I want you to take a picture of me laying on the ice. And they're like, why would you want a picture of you laying on the ice? I said, because every person that knows me is going to know that 5 minutes from now, there'll be a picture of me standing up skating again.
Amazing.
So we really do. It is hard for business owners, but if you're trying to create that likability that will lead to trust, that will lead to potential business customers or clients, then letting them see a little bit more of you as the person you are the other, other times of the day when you're not in front of them, can really go a long way to building those connections and giving you the opportunity to have relationships with these people that can lead to work.
Absolutely. Love it. It's so much fun. I had been lucky enough to also ice skate at the Rockefeller Center when my husband and I traveled to America a couple of years ago. And that was one of the things that we just wanted to go and do, because we'd seen it, we'd seen it on the television so many times. It was like, cool, let's go do that. So that aside, like I'm interested to know, about your content creation journey. So one of the things that my business partner and I, Vicky Helm, do, and Vicky hosts another show called the Coffee Break Show, is that we actually teach people how to create their own live shows, find your voice and share your message through creating your own live show, such as this, right? So and often we get from people, I'm frightened, I'm scared, what would I say? How am I going to do that? Who's going to listen to me? So I'm really interested to know, what is your experience? Like, what advice would you give to somebody who knows they've got a message inside of them, knows that they want to get it out? What advice would you give to them? And then my second part to that is, what experiences, what benefits have you found by speaking out and sharing your story?
Right. So I would say if somebody knows that they have a message to share, but they are nervous about live streaming, whether it's the technology or the sound of their voice or the people, worrying about their video quality and all these other things. Those of y'all who are watching can tell from my recording space that my backdrop is not amazing, but this is the best that we can do in my space, and I prefer to focus more on my message than on my backdrop. So I would say this: I think there's basically three ways you can do it. You can either just jump in head first and press record and put it up on the internet and do that, and then as you do it each time, you're going to get better. But I realize that's the hard way to do it. I mean, that's really facing a fear. And my friends have an expression about me. They like to say that Max isn't smart enough to be scared. So I've done a lot of things in my life where if I'd have thought about them a little bit longer, I might not have done them. So for example, when I recorded my first video ever, which was for the Midway Marketplace, I did it because I had just sold a $125,000 mall carousel, because I convinced the owners to record a 90-second video of it in operation. And I thought, hey, if it can do that for a carousel, maybe recording videos will do that for Max. So I got a friend to help me set up Skype, because back then all the cool kids were on Skype, and I recorded this short video, but I didn't have an intro and I didn't have the money or the time to arrange for one. So I just decided to sing on my intro. And I did a little bit of Nat King Cole's The Christmas Carol because it was near the end of the year, and I had set myself a goal of doing it before the year was over. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to sing, I'm going to do Nat King Cole. And the funny thing was, people saw it and they're like, Max, we really like your singing. You need to do more of that. And since then, I've noticed that according to my YouTube stats, people listen to my singing more than they do my talking, which is encouraging and discouraging both at the same time. But I did it just, I just pressed record and I put it out in the world and went from there. That's the hard way to do it. The next thing to do would be to get you one of these resources that tells you everything that you need to do in order to go live or start recording videos, and do like I did with my website. Take each one of those steps as an exercise. Record yourself going through those steps and sharing those recordings with your close friends and family, so that you can get feedback without the real scary feedback of being on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. The third way, though, and I think you're going to like this, because I recently talked to a gentleman he's really into a bunch of crazy stuff, like driving dirt bikes over 100 and something miles an hour and jumping out of, and he's actually a pilot. And I asked him, I said, what do you do when you're trying to do something new and scary? He says, here's what he said, the way you have to do it is you have to find somebody who knows what they're doing, who can look over your shoulder and watch you do it and give you encouragement and feedback and advice while you're doing it. So in effect, the easiest way and the I think probably the most successful way to do this is to do what you and your friend do, which is walk people through the process and give them feedback on each step, and eventually get to the point where they can go live on StreamYard and be streamed around the world on 7 or 8 different platforms. So I would say that's probably the best way and eventually that person is going to know you're ready, just as in my life, because when I started my podcast, What's Your Excuse? In the beginning, it was called No Excuses, and it's changed names a couple of times, but we're settled on What's Your Excuse now. I had a co-host named Fred By who helped me get started, because I didn't feel like I could have conversations or record my thoughts and still worry about the computer stuff. So he was my co-host for a while, but he finally said, Max, you don't need me. And he said, I'm gonna prove it to you that you don't need me. He said, you know that guy you're interviewing tomorrow afternoon? I'm not gonna be here. So I had to learn how to use Zoom, and I also had to record my first solo interview within 24 hours of knowing that my coach and my co-host and my podcasting mentor didn't believe I needed his help anymore. It was a wonderful interview. I learned a lot of stuff. My guest was a guy named Michael Schwartz, who is a filmmaker from San Francisco who likes to say that he's losing his sight, but not his storyteller's vision. Really cool guy. We had a wonderful talk about photography and filmmaking and how does a blind person create a movie, and which was all really perfect timing because that was just before I went off to New York for my first time. And without that interview, I wouldn't have gotten all the great photos that I came back with and that ended up in my third book, The Blind Blogger's New York City Adventures. So that's the best way. If you're not brave enough or crazy enough or maybe even stupid enough to just go ahead and do it, and you're not one of those people that can work through the steps on yourself, get somebody like you and have you help them work through until they go live.
Well, that wasn't planned at all, that little conversation there. But for those that do want that little bit of help, I'm going to make an offer now for people to join our. We've actually got a free Facebook group and a free 14-day program that actually walks people through the process and gives them the confidence to be able to create their own live show. So if you head on, I'll get one of my team to actually put it in the comments section. It is Live Show Secrets on Facebook. So if you head on over to that group on Facebook, you'll be able to join. It's absolutely free. Vicky Helm and I have put together a 14-day program which actually teach you guys a lot of stuff about how to actually go live and the things that you need to be doing. So just to Max's point, I firmly believe, and in everything that I've done, I've always found the fastest way to get there is to find somebody else who's already done it and get them to help you. And that leads me to, you also talk about this concept of interdependence versus independence. So let's talk. I think that's a nice way to wrap up today's show and helping people to understand, because often we think, I'm just going to be independent. I'm just going to figure it out all myself. I don't need anybody to help me do something. And I don't want to show that I'm not able to do it. So I'll figure it out. But often that takes the long route, right? Yes. So let's talk about this concept of interdependence versus independence, and why do you make that distinction, and what does that actually mean to you?
Okay, well, first I just want to wrap up our last point by confirming, yes, we did not discuss your course before we went live today, and if anybody has followed any of my work, or if you go over and check out my website, you'll realize right away that I don't really plan a whole lot of what I'm going to say until I get to the conversations, but yeah, that's the best way to do it. They call them trailblazers for a reason, somebody to make the path easy. So interdependence versus independence. I really have to thank my friend Alex Sanfilippo, who runs a website called podmatch.com, where people who have podcasts and people who want to be on podcasts can connect with each other. I was giving a talk at a conference for podcasters, and my talk was my talk was something like the power of asking for help and accepting help when offered. And I gave my 5-minute Peachy Coochie talk. And when I was through, Alex, he came out to the lobby and he said, Max, he said, you just gave a wonderful talk on interdependence. I said, what the heck is interdependence? He said, interdependence is what you just talked to us all about. I'm like, okay, now I know what to call it. So, interdependence really is just the understanding that we are not meant to accomplish big, difficult, challenging things by ourselves. That when we try to do them all by ourselves, we make them harder. We decrease the joy we receive. I like to say that when we allow other people to be part of our journey, that we get there a lot quicker with less stress and more joy. So really, it's about accepting help, bringing other people into your journey and making them part of your story. And really, the connections and the fact that you are doing this together, it just makes things so much easier. And you're right, independence is what we're all taught. Luckily for me, as somebody who knew he was eventually going to lose most or all of his vision, my family spent all their time teaching me two things. They taught me, Max, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. And Max, always look in the direction of the person you're talking to. So those are two things that were drummed into me over the years. And so I don't have this belief that when I ask for help that I look weak or inept or that it makes me feel like a failure when I ask. But what I've noticed over the years is, and I want people to think about this, think about how good it makes you feel when you do something for somebody who really all they can do for you is to say thank you. And then think about people in the world who have spent their lifetimes, or at least a good chunk of their lifetime, learning a skill, a trade, perfecting a talent. Think of athletes, musicians, filmmakers, podcasters, rock stars. These people, they have a wealth of knowledge, but they don't often get a chance to share their knowledge or experience with other people. So just imagine how good it would make them feel if you came along and said, hey, I know that you are the expert on this, that you know all there is to know, and I'm really struggling with this. So would you please help me? And so often by doing that, by being willing to be vulnerable and actually ask for help, then, more often than not, people will want to help you because it's going to make them feel good when they help you. And I try to express this in this. Here's the saying I've come up with, and I'm going to say it twice because every time I try to get away with just saying it once, the host usually stop me and tell me it's too important. This is the point of this is to put the focus on the other person and take the focus off of your ego. So what I want you to know is when you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you. So when you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy, the pleasure, the blessing they would have received by helping you. And I have found a lot of people who that has really helped unblock things for them when they realize that they're making somebody else's day harder and they're making their day drearier by not just sticking their hand up and saying, hey, I need help. Now there are two other parts to this interdependence though. Asking for help is difficult, but I've learned that the thing that's more difficult than asking for help is accepting help when it's offered to us without us consciously remembering that we asked for it. So a lot of times when somebody comes up and says, hey, I want to help you do X, they're like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't ask for your help. I'm doing just fine by myself. Would you please go help somebody who needs your help? That's the usual response. So in that position, what you have to understand is it took that person more courage to offer to help a stranger or somebody they slightly know, or even a friend. It took them more courage to offer than it would have taken you to ask. So if you're sure that you don't need their help, then please just respond to them politely and kindly, and make sure that they understand that you appreciate the offer, that you're not offended by the offer, but you just don't really think you need their offer. And then, of course, if you're smart, you'll put their email address or their phone number in your back pocket somewhere, because the odds are down the road you'll realize, yeah, I probably did need their help. And the reason, and people get really offended when somebody offers to help us, but what they don't realize is that we ask for things in so many different ways, and half the time we don't even realize we're doing it. And people are going to think I'm talking about prayer or meditation or the law of attraction or a vision board. What I'm actually talking about is there are people in the world who notice other people. They are intuitive, if not empathic, and they will see a blog post or a podcast recording or an article or a social media post, and they'll think that person needs something, they need help, and it's something I could help them with. I'm going to reach out and offer to help them. So we ask in a lot of ways we never think. I guarantee you, if you pay attention to your conversations over the next 24 hours, you're going to find at least one time where something that you're struggling with slipped out to somebody that you wouldn't consider one of your regular confidants. Somebody that you don't usually disclose your dark secrets or your life trials with. You're going to notice, hey, I didn't come out and say it 100%, but if they were paying attention, they would know. And so that happens quite a lot, especially on the internet. People, they just pay attention, the ones who do, and they reach out and help. So please, accept their help graciously, whether you need it or not. And then the third part of this interdependence is gratitude, because people think that when I say gratitude, I mean to say thank you. What I mean is, in order to show, well, we got a long way before my computer started talking. In order to show you truly appreciate what somebody has done for you or the advice they've given you, you have to take action on their advice or their information. I mean, I'm sure you have had many times in your life where you've had a conversation with somebody, they asked your opinion, you gave them their opinion or your opinion, and then when they walked off, you thought, yeah, sure, they're never going to do anything I just talked about. So, with gratitude, it's taking action and implementing what they have offered to teach us, and then along with that, saying thank you, if appropriate, posting on social media or sending out an email and letting other people know, hey, this person did something really cool for me that I greatly appreciate. Those are parts of gratitude. But to me, the biggest part of gratitude is using the information or advice or technique that you were given from this person that offered to help you. So interdependence, there are three things, or four. I guess you say there are four parts. There's the building of the community. There's connecting with people online and in person, so you have people to ask. Then there's asking for help you need instead of trying to do it all by yourself. Then there's accepting help when it's offered by people, even if you don't remember asking them. And then there's gratitude. And like I say, I have come a long way. I've accomplished a lot of things because I just have decided to find solutions instead of making excuses, because I have become determined to find the positive wherever it may happen to be. And because I have become willing to ask for help and accept help when offered. And trust me, even if I wasn't visually impaired, I still would need a lot of help to get from point A to point J. And even now, there are still people helping me. Last summer, a friend of mine from church challenged me to write a song. And I said, I've never written a song. I wouldn't know where to start. And she said, Max, how did you do all them other things you didn't know how to do? I said, well, I just started. And so she said, why don't you try, coming up with a little bit of a melody or recording a few words. And the next thing I know, I recorded a song called If You Don't Ask, which is all about interdependence. So it's just a continual thing. Sometimes people are offering advice. Sometimes they're doing material, physical things, tangible things to help me. And sometimes, and some of the most important times, they have challenged me to do things that I never really saw myself doing.
Beautiful. Well, I want to, to wrap today's show up, I've got, I suppose, these three core things that I know, these are the things that you've spoken about today, but I just really want to reiterate them because I think they're really important messages for our listeners to take away today. And I think the first thing is for you, it's decide to find solutions instead of making excuses. And I've heard that time and time and time again where you've gone, okay, I could find an excuse not to do something, but I choose not to do that. I'm going to shift my perspective, and therefore I'm going to find a solution, and that has always shifted the results that you've got. The second is to ask for help and to accept that help when it is offered. And Max just spoke about, as being aware and being listening and looking out for when people need help and being able to offer it. And then also using that gratitude and accepting and actually taking action on the advice that you're given. And the third is to determined to find something good in every aspect. And I think we started today's show with finding that silver lining, so finding something good in every aspect of your life. And you said that the bottom line is that has actually inspired you, and you've gone on to use that same philosophy to continue to inspire others. And with that in mind, with those three things, I think, Max, you have a life where you've been able to, let's call him, bring, manifest, whatever you want to call it. You've put yourself in the driver's seat, despite some of the challenges that you've faced, to actually create a life where you are really, truly happy and being able to do the things that you want to do.
Yes.
So I want people to take that away from today's conversation. It's been very inspiring. I've loved every minute chatting with you. Maybe we'll have you back some other time and we can talk about some other stuff, because I know that, great storyteller always has lots more stories to be told. So maybe, maybe you can come back at some other time and we can have a bit more of a chat, because I think there's a lot more to unlock from the life and wisdom of Max Ivey. So thank you for being such a wonderful guest.
Well, thank you for such a wonderful compliment. I appreciate that you agree that I'm a good storyteller, and I would love to come back at some other time. And I just want to leave with this thought, because this is really important to me. I started having conversations over the internet with people, before we called it podcasting. It was radio interviews in 2013. Which I know there were some people who started in 8 or 9, but I've been doing this a long time because I didn't have a way to meet people face to face, and I knew there had to be an option. I eventually found radio and podcast interviews, and I've done literally hundreds of them. But here's the thing: without people like you, without people like Brian Jackson, who gave me my first shot on the air, people wouldn't know who the heck I am. There wouldn't be the blind blogger, or what's your excuse, or no excuses, or the Why Excuse Network. None of this stuff could happen without people like you. So, talking about accepting help, I want to thank you for your part in my journey and your part in my continuing story.
Oh, you are most welcome, and thank you very, very much. It's as you say, like this interdependence. It's about two people helping one another, and hopefully by us doing what we do today, right? We're inspiring and we're helping somebody else, and we're encouraging somebody else to find their voice, and also either be a guest or go ahead and create your own show, so that you too can be a vehicle that allows the unlocking of people's voices, and the person that can help other people shift their perspective and their results, because it's so important. So guys, I want to say thank you very much for tuning in today. You guys know that with the Unlock Show, it's live. I'm going to be back here again on Friday morning, Brisbane time, 10 a.m. for another episode of Unlocked. I'll have something awesome to share with you guys on Friday. No doubt I'll have something to give away that will help you create a life that is unlocked across either your business, your family, or your life. So tune in on Friday. And again, next Wednesday at 10 a.m., I'll be back for another episode of The Unlock Show with another amazing guest. But for today, I want to wish everybody a fantastic rest of the week. As I always say, go out there, live your life unlocked, whatever that may mean for you. Go and do it. Today, I hope you've seen that there are no excuses. You can choose to have excuses, or you can choose to find a solution. So be solution orientated. Go out there and unlock whatever it is that you need to create the life and the life of your dreams. I'll see you guys again next week. Thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.